Greetings, power, salutations, welcome. Another I Black Sunday School. Your host, I'm on Black. My wonderful co is on a different motion, in a different movement. Over here, Melanie Royalty, wherever she is. Yes, the forum, the platform where the curriculum established by the planter class and the slave owners from the 1700s have been given a curriculum, a syllabus, given to us in an institution that was called Sunday School. Sunday School was a place where Africans, enslaved people, were carted into every Sunday to be given and to be spoken to about the Word of God. And it is the words of God that will be instrumental in maintaining control of the plantation. The whips and the scars and the burning and the torturing was not enough. That damage was mostly to the physical structure. There had to be a way to control our psychological mind, to control the spirit of the Africans. So as usual, this particular platform examines three important books given to us by the slave owners. Three texts that we embrace without questioning and which we quote without thinking. The books are the books of Genesis, Exodus, and the book of Revelations. African people, black people, we can spend our lifetime talking about those three books and things that happen in those books. And how we can spend years upon years going around in a circle, trying to convince ourselves that the things that we read, we actually believe. So for the first few sessions, we've been exploring the book of Genesis in particular. How they got us into a beginning, how they locked us our imaginations into a creation mythology, how they followed that mythology with a fable of Eve and Adam to tell us how society begins. In the throes of jealousy and death and murder, we are convinced that this is the beginning of society. They take us through a series of stories in the Garden of Eden, the expulsion from the garden, and the beginning to see a development of what we have to believe is the society of people. And we know that the story goes on. We have no dates of the events, but we hear and we read about people doing things between the Garden of Eden being expelled, and to the point when the book takes us into the life of an individual named Noah. And through Noah, we are experiencing a wash away and a restart of civilization. All African history, whenever it was between the Garden of Eden and Noah's flood, washed away. The restart with 4 males and 4 females. This is in our imaginary history. African people, we have been given that and we have passed it on to our children. And we continue to view the history of the world through the lens of the Bible. We continue to view the history of the entire planet from the point of view of in the beginning. Not questioning who wrote that in the beginning. Where was that person while the beginning was going on? So many illogical, unnatural events we are exposed to in those stories and we are told to believe. No dates, just once upon a time. But as we come through the book of Genesis, and we come to the Tower of Babel and all of these confusing stories, African people need to have a location now of how do we find ourselves in Earth history. How did they introduce us now to Earth history? And the most outstanding event to greet us after the book of Genesis is the book of Exodus. And in that Exodus now, for the first time, we are really being engaged with Africa. And in terms of Africa, I really mean to speak specifically now to the area that we call Egypt. So we are introduced as a collective people to the idea of Egypt through the Bible. And the most profound story about Egypt is connected to what this program is really about, the Exodus. I want to engage I and I now into really thinking a little bit through this drama that we all were exposed to and to which we never really found much time to question. This event called the Exodus. Is it a factual event? Is it fictional? Is the Exodus a metaphor? What is the Exodus? And who and what was the motivation for this Exodus? Who were the people of the Exodus, etc., etc.? Because this drama is traumatic. And traumatic memories tend to linger over centuries. Especially if you internalize the events to the point where you actually feel it in your bones. The Exodus, Moses versus Pharaoh. Remember? Yeah. Deep in the subconscious, deeper in the collective unconscious, nearly all of us as black children had to come up on that struggle and take a side. Pharaoh versus Moses. So African people, let us recall how they present this confrontation to us through Bible stories. And for the first time now in the Bible, now we're hearing something about Egypt directly. But indirectly, we are told of Egypt through the Pharaoh. So before going any further now in this Moses versus Pharaoh and the fact or fiction of the Exodus, time is an important element because remember now, they locked us up in a construct of time that started with in the beginning. And so we've been traveling along a timeline. Day 1, day 2, 5, 6 days, 7 day of creation, we're into the 100,000 day now. We don't know which day we reach yet. However, we're supposed to be moving through time. But how do we record time? How do we record events that happened in the past? The Europeans give us a model. And check it out. They introduced us to something called BC. And they introduced us to something called AD. Two ideas. I was always perplexed from primary school about BC and AD. BC in the Jamaican parlance means bomber clot. BC also means blood clot in the Jamaican parlance. So when I was in primary school and I saw those things, one of the things that me and my friend used to call it and laugh about. But in the book, it tells us that BC means before Christ. And this is how they're going to use the Christ symbol now to demarcate time. Remember now, in the beginning and the guy that you know not no time and no months and the days and a week. We must go through the story. But they want to bring us out of that cloud and give us a space now on the planet Earth where we can see where we must begin to be the workers. So in the book, we are introduced to Moses as a liberator. And we can look at the historical dates now to try to find out when did Moses live? And what time did Moses live? Because I need to find out when was this Exodus? When did this Exodus take place? And how many people were part of this Exodus? Yes, this big event that have man singing about, you know, the movement of the people through the Exodus and the need to send us another brother Moses. What is that all about, black people? What is this Exodus? Is it a reality, fact, fiction, or metaphor? What is the evidence that such an event took place? Because, without going much further, there is no evidence of any Exodus from the Anglo-Egyptian history. The Egyptians have no record of any Exodus taking place out of Egypt. So the story is coming from one side. And we as African people now struggling to liberate our historical mind. Need some clarity here. No music required in this episode. Our thought powers to be galvanized. But it's an important juncture given to us as African people in that Sunday school curriculum that has jammed our consciousness from that time to this time. It has disconnected us from an important aspect of our power. That Exodus story. So look at the timeline now. They give us a thing called BC. BC means before Christ. Later on in my journey and studies, Dr. Ben Yochanan introduced me to the concept of BCE, which he referred to as before the Christian era. So let us work with what they gave us at first. Then give us BC, before Christ. So any event, world event, that happened before Christ will happen in the BC time. And all events that happen after Christ was born will be called AD. AD means Anno Domini. It's a Latin phrase that means in the year of our Lord. So look at how time has been constructed for us. From the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, straightforward until we get into the BC period. We don't know when it's 10 BC. We don't know if the first BC was 5,000, but BC has no end of numbers. Because you have 1 BC, 2 BC, 5, 10, 15, 20, 1,000 BC, a million BC. So the BC has no beginning. It's a construct called before Christ. No. How did they arrive at this BC? How did the Europeans stop time again? I remember, them stop time during the flood of Noah. Restart the clock again. Another reset. How did they stop the clock to start the clock at year 1? How did they stop the clock? They use the concept of Jesus as the beginning of time again. And so all that happened before is before Christ, BC. Now check this. That same image of that man that they're using. They tell you that he lived for 33 years. You check this out. Jesus, the Christ that they tell us was born to the Virgin and all of these things. He lived for 33 years. The doctrine tells, the literature tells us that he preached his ministry for 3 years. From age 30, he started preaching his ministry, preaching. And at 33, he was crucified. The records also show that within the AD framework, he was crucified 29 AD. Follow the months. Jesus the Christ was crucified 29 AD. But he was born 4 years before. So he was born 4 BC. Confliction that Jesus Christ would die in 29 AD, but he was born in 4 BC. Nonsensical, but we don't put our thoughts to solve in those conundrums. We overlook that. So let us look at the BC construct. In what BC can we find the Exodus? How many hundreds or thousands of years before Christ do we find the Exodus? Black people, check yourself. The records that they show us tell us that the Exodus occurred sometime around 1450 BC, 1,450 years before Christ. 1,400 years before Christ. African people, we have to find ourselves now. Where is the race of African people? 1400 years before Christ. Where are we in West Africa in 1400 BC? Where are we in Azania in Southern Africa in 1400 BC? We're all over the planet as dark-skinned people. And the greater evidence of our existence rests not in Moses, but in the conflict that Moses has with the Pharaoh. Because even in the Exodus, we as children would sit in the theater and watch the end part of the Exodus with the children of Israel, with them donkey cart and them mule and them bird and them fowl moving through high waters, pulling the donkey cart and them hurrying up and being led, of course, by Moses. And they are hurrying up to get between the Red Sea crossing, because this is the emotional thing that grabs us. Here are these slaves escaping from the wickedness and the judgment of Pharaoh. We are sitting in the theater watching these people running for their life and hoping that these slaves can be liberated from the capture. And then we look further down into the movie and we see Pharaoh army coming behind them. So it's as if it's a 100-meter run. We, the spectators, are at the tip looking down at the race. And Moses and his people reach about the 50-meter line. And when we look, Pharaoh just take off. So it's a sprint. Can Moses and his people come out of the tunnel before Pharaoh reaches them? And we are in this children heart beating, pulse racing, and we are saying, hurry up, Moses, hurry up, children of Israel. No. Pause. Because it's Metro Golden Mayor giving us a chance to see this now, Hollywood at work. I was seeing the mighty Charlton Heston standing up and commanding the people to follow him. So we are capturing our imagination. But let us slow down the script, the film, and look at the characters. The end comes, and the water closes over. Moses and his people come out, and we cheer in the world. We cheer. Pharaoh and his army defeated, drowned out. Pause. Which Pharaoh drowned? Which Pharaoh in the history of the pharaonic line of pharaohs drowned? There is no history of any Pharaoh drowning. At no time chasing no people. The story given to us of slaves escaping from Pharaoh puts Pharaoh in the position of the colonizer, puts Pharaoh in the position of a slave owner. What it does is remove the power of the Kemetic culture, which Pharaoh represents. And it is that I and I need to reclaim our Kemetic knowledge of ourselves that we have left in ancient Kemet with Moses and his people following him. We have identified with a group of people called Israelites, not Egyptians, not Black Africans, a group of people called Israelites who are told will follow Moses. What was left? Our history, our culture, our dynasties, our philosophy, and it is for us to recognize that that break across that Red Sea was breaking us away from our kinetic powers. The kinetic culture of the pyramids. We are the people of the pyramid culture. We are the people that Moses, in his story, grew up amongst. So in that metaphorical crossing of a Red Sea, I would ask today, how many people was in that Exodus? How many people were left in Africa after those few people followed Moses out? Where did those people go more than circling around in a desert? Is that how African people who have been connected now to this Red Sea crossing condemn themselves into wilderness? We have been as a people in the wilderness from the moment we have followed that doctrine of Moses and the Red Sea. We have been in the wilderness. And to return home, we must reclaim our journey and reclaim our space and return to that Red Sea. The Red Sea is the path to our African Kemetic culture. When we reclaim that knowledge and realize that the pharaonic dynasties and the creators of the pyramids and the builders of the Sphinx of mathematics and chemistry is us. Slaves could not build a pyramid. 120,000 Egyptian soldiers, 10 months a year, for 20 years. Slaves could not build a pyramid. How can slaves lift a ton, a rock 2 tons high, 50 feet in the air? Slaves cannot do those type of ability. They are scientists and technicians. But the movie projects Egypt as the enemy, Pharaoh as the enemy, and the people of Moses as our generation. So we have rejected our anciency. We have rejected our power to follow an alien story. Because in 1400 years before the Christian era, Africans were all over the world. Pyramid cultures were in Central America. The pyramid culture of the Sudan, which has more pyramids than Egypt, were already in construction. Meroe, who built the Great Wall of Benin, who built the great stone architecture of Zimbabwe. So where are all of those African black people while this story going on about Exodus? Who is part in that story? That's a fine Hebrew mythology. So today we have black people arguing and fighting over who is Israel, based upon that mythology of Moses and the Red Sea crossing. So where are the Chinese? Where are the great race of Indian people? Where are the dark-skinned people of the world? So in the Black Sunday School, I'm going to show that we must revisit that Red Sea crossing thing and realize that that is the point of our dysfunction. So we turn our backs on Africa. Because Egypt, even within Rasta culture, was part of the identification of the enemy. Fire upon Egypt. We were so conditioned to be anti-Egypt. When it is a European who called the place Egypt, it's a European who called the place Africa. When we called ourselves people of Al-Qibula, we always recognize ourselves as the people of dark skin. So it's reclaiming pharaonic Egypt, reclaiming the mathematics and the chemistry of ancient Kemet. It's reclaiming the word Kemet. And realize what this Mosaic journey was all about and where it has taken us. That today, black people are split up into tribes, calling themselves tribes of Israel. So where's the Akan? Where's the Mandingo? Or have we limited ourselves now to the tribes of Israel to some stories of Esau and Jacob? And we have to liberate our consciousness from Hebrew mythologies, Hebrew stories. Moses is one of our first superheroes in literature. Because the Bible stories have heroes in it. Moses is a big hero, just like Samson. And Delilah was his weak point. And there was David. And enough man think Solomon was wise, and we don't know what Solomon has done and said to be called the wisest man in the world. So we're the power of Esau. What about the philosophy and the power of Esau? The medical sciences and the knowledge of Imhotep. We can't rate no Solomon. Dr. Ben Yochanan made us know that Solomon was a wimp. That the greater kings of Africa could not be compared to. Solomon could not be compared to. And Solomon's glory came not because of his wisdom and skill, but because of the work of his architect, Hiram Abif. And Hiram Abif was the attraction for Sheba to go to Solomon's place. She wanted to meet the builder of the pyramids, not Solomon. And that burned him. So there are different perspectives to Hebrew stories. But we as African people now have begun to dissociate and free ourselves from the mythologies of the Hebrew Bible stories. We don't need no other Moses. Moses was never liberated African people. Moses carried African people into the wilderness and construct this one God of terror. That one God of terror knows what running the whole place. The God of Moses. When the God of Kemet could never be found by itself because we always have a combination male females. I mean raw. So the God of Moses is time we dissociate yourself, but you have to know where we're coming from before we can let go that. And we're coming from the Kemetic structure of gods and goddesses, where the males and the females are gods, are pharaohs. We have distinguished no gender issue. Pharaohs could be female and pharaohs could be male. And the great creator of the one God philosophy is King Akhenaten, motivated by his wife, Nefertiti. Moses hijacked monotheism and created this rebel god, this warlike god that terrorized black people during slavery. And it is that one God that we were impressed with, that could allow no white man to sleep at night, because that one God was watching over us. Yes, we internalize the terror. And we bring the terrorists into our spiritual life. Seriously organized and well skillfully put out. So I block Sunday school. Heroes, heroes. Moses, big time hero. First, major lawgiver. Second one is the Jesus. And along the literature that we give early now to supplement the Sunday school was the comic books. And in the comic books, we also had our heroes, superheroes, usually all white men, Batman, Superman, Robin, all of these images, all our heroes were always white. And all our enemies always look to the black. So Pharaoh is black. Pharaoh is I. Pharaoh is pyramid culture. Pharaoh is the Sphinx. Chemistry. So if you're anti-Pharaoh or you're anti-Egypt, you're anti your blackness. And that is where the correction is needed in a significant way. Our spirituality cannot be grounded in Moses, nor literature of King James. Our spirituality must be based in Kemetic culture. At the foundation. Kemetic is chemistry for black. And that's how we return now to embracing our blackness and our black bodies and begin to re-establish value for our bodies. Our bodies have value. Lift the mentality from being cattle to being dignified beings. We have to burn out the cattle version. We're no longer born as sinners and dies and shaped by iniquity and have to be saved by the blood of Moses and the blood of Jesus. We don't need that blood to save. The only blood we need to be conscious of is the African blood that goes through our veins. Power unto the item. as African people, we struggle to regain our identity. Undisputed blackness. Rastafari. Yeah. So that's it. In a summary, the Exodus, fact or fiction, Pharaoh versus Moses. Which Pharaoh did Moses challenge? Which Pharaoh did drown? Because if you check the BC timeline, Pharaoh Ramesses would have been in power at the time that Moses was being projected to be on the earth. Pharaoh Ramesses. Ramesses is a great Pharaoh. And there's no struggle between Pharaoh and any mythological Moses. There are no plagues that hit Egypt and babies died and blood and frogs out of the water. All this nonsense. Not in the history and the reality of Kemet. The story becomes so confounded that the God of Moses is actually betting against Pharaoh's hardness of his heart. And we are internalizing the battles thinking that it's a struggle of good versus evil. And we project evil on Pharaoh. And we project evil on Egypt. We are self-condemnatory. We're self-condemning. We're condemning ourselves. So on the way out of this Exodus, we are reasoning into our own blackness. And we need to reclaim that Red Sea crossing. Yeah, man. We need to make that psychic journey through that Red Sea if you did come through it and return to Kemet and embrace the Trinity of Horus, Isis, and Osiris. You need something to hold on to the Trinity. Me, myself, and I. Coming out of Kemet. Yeah. Pause.